Before we begin, let me tell you about the night I stopped being invisible. My name is Victoria Lee, and if you're expecting a fairy tale, you've come to the wrong story. But if you want to know what happens when a woman finally recognizes her worth, keep watching. Victoria's feet ached in the cheap heels she'd worn for 6 hours straight, the kind of ache that started in the arches and climbed up her calves like vines strangling a garden wall. She stood in the narrow service hallway of Moonlight Lounge, counting tips with hands that smelled of cleaning solution and other people's leftover food. $43. Not even enough to cover tomorrow's textbooks. 3 more hours until closing. Then home to her studio apartment that was really just a converted storage room. Then 4 hours of studying for her organic chemistry exam. Then back here tomorrow night. Same cheap heels, same forced smile, same invisible existence serving people who looked through her like she was made of glass. 20 years old. Pre-med student at Seoul National University. $47,000 in student debt and climbing. A 3.7 GPA that meant everything and nothing at the same time. This was supposed to be temporary. Everything was always supposed to be temporary. If you've ever counted coins and realized they'd never add up to your dreams, you know exactly where I was that night. And if you're still here listening to a woman admit she sold herself for tuition, hit subscribe, because this story gets darker and stranger before it gets better. Comment below if you've ever felt invisible while working yourself to death. I see you. I was you. But that night, someone finally saw me too. Victoria. The manager's voice made her jump. Mr. Kim stood in the hallway, his face pale under the fluorescent lights, hands wringing the towel he carried like he was trying to strangle it. Table 12 wants you. Personally. After closing, her stomach dropped. What? The guest at table 12. Mr. Kim wouldn't meet her eyes. He asked for you specifically. Said to keep you after the other staff leaves. Table 12. Corner booth. The man who'd been watching her for 3 nights running. Everyone knew who sat at table 12. Now, before I tell you what happened when I walked into that empty lounge with a man who'd been studying me like I was something he intended to own, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel, because I'm about to tell you a story about power, possession, and the strange space between captivity and freedom. And I promise you, it's not what you think. Also, drop a comment of where you're listening from and what time it is right now over there. The Korean man in the expensive black suit who never ate, just nursed a single glass of whiskey and watched the room like a hawk studying prey. The man other servers avoided, whose presence made Mr. Kim defer and bow lower than for any other customer. The man whose name was whispered in the kitchen with equal parts fear and respect. Kang Min. Victoria had felt his eyes on her all week. Not the way drunk businessmen looked at her. That grabbing, leering assessment that made her skin crawl. His gaze was different. Clinical. Calculating. Like he was taking inventory of something he intended to acquire. I can't, Victoria said, though her voice shook. I have an exam tomorrow. I need to study. He wasn't asking. Mr. Kim's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. And neither am I. After closing. Don't make him wait. He left before she could protest further. Victoria's hands trembled as she shoved the tips into her pocket. She knew what men like that wanted from women like her. She'd spent 2 years dodging hands under tables, deflecting propositions disguised as job opportunities, smiling through harassment because rent was due and loans didn't care about dignity. But something about the way Kang Min watched her felt different. More dangerous. More permanent. She should run. Clock out early. Disappear into Seoul's crowded streets and never come back. Instead, she thought about the debt counter on her phone that climbed higher every day. About her mother back in Atlanta who'd sacrificed everything to send her here. About the dream of being Dr. Victoria Lee that kept her going through double shifts and pre-dawn study sessions. Sometimes desperation looks like courage. She stayed. 2 hours later, the last drunk customer stumbled out into the Seoul night, and Victoria was alone with the man who'd been watching her for 3 nights. She entered the main lounge after Mr. Kim and the other servers had hurried out like the building was on fire. The space looked different, empty, larger, more ominous. Moonlight Lounge catered to Seoul's elite, all dark wood and leather, soft amber lighting and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city skyline. Kang Min sat at table 12, the corner booth that offered a view of both the entrance and the windows. Strategic positioning. He still hadn't touched his whiskey. Up close, he was even more devastating than she'd realized. Late 20s, maybe 30. Sharp features that suggested both intelligence and cruelty in equal measure. His black suit was custom-tailored, probably cost more than her entire year's tuition. Everything about him screamed power, wealth, danger. He didn't stand when she approached, didn't smile, just watched her with those dark, calculating eyes that had been tracking her all week. Sit. Not an invitation. A command. Victoria remained standing. If this was going to happen, whatever this was, she wouldn't start from a position of submission. Mr. Kim said you wanted to see me. I said sit, Victoria. The sound of her name in his mouth sent a shiver down her spine. Not fear exactly. Something more complicated. She didn't sit. Instead, she crossed her arms, forcing her voice to stay steady. It's late. I have an exam in the morning. If you want to proposition me like every other man in this place, I'll save you the time. I'm not interested. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise. Amusement. It was gone too quickly to identify. I'm not propositioning you. His voice was quiet, controlled, more dangerous for its calmness. I'm ending your waitressing career. Tonight. Victoria blinked. Excuse me. Kong Min leaned forward slightly, his fingers steepled on the table between them. I know your schedule. Morning classes at SNU. Evening shifts here, Tuesday through Saturday. Sunday mornings at the cafe on Gangnam Boulevard. 3.7 GPA. Pre-med. $47,000 in student debt from American undergraduate loans, plus your Korean tuition costs. You sleep approximately 4 hours a night. Your right shoe has a split in the sole you've been meaning to replace for 2 months, but can't afford to. You take the 342 bus home because it's cheaper than the subway. Your mother calls every Sunday morning, and you lie to her about how well you're doing. Each fact landed like a physical blow. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. How do you? I make it my business to know things about what interests me. He picked up his whiskey glass, still full, studying the amber liquid in the low light. You interest me, Victoria. You have for 3 months. 3 months. Her voice came out strangled. You've been watching me for 3 months? Since the night you broke down crying in the storage closet after a customer grabbed you. His eyes met hers. Since the night you wiped your tears, fixed your makeup, and went back out with a smile. That's when I knew. Knew what? That you have something rare. Ambition mixed with desperation. Intelligence mixed with vulnerability. Pride mixed with pragmatism. He set down the glass with precise control. You're drowning, Victoria. Working yourself to exhaustion for a dream that's slipping further away with every shift. Your debt grows faster than you can pay it. Your grades are slipping, 3.7 now, but it was 3.9 last semester. In 6 months, you'll drop out or break down. Probably both. Victoria's nails dug into her palms. Everything he said was true, and hearing it spoken aloud by this stranger felt like being flayed open. What do you want from me? To make you an offer. I already said I'm not. I will pay off your student debt. All of it. American and Korean. His voice remained level, businesslike, as if discussing a real estate transaction. I will cover your tuition for the remaining 3 years of your degree. Housing. Living expenses. Books. Everything. You will quit both jobs tonight and never set foot in this lounge again. You will focus solely on your studies and finish your degree debt-free. Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs. It was too much, too perfect, too impossible. In exchange for what? Total ownership. The word hung in the air between them like a blade. Kong Min stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. He was taller than she'd realized, broader. When he moved around the table toward her, Victoria's instinct screamed at her to back away. She held her ground. I am not a charity, Victoria. I don't invest without return. He stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne. Expensive, subtle, nothing like the cheap aftershave of the men who usually crowded her space. If I pay for your education, your life, your freedom from this, he gestured dismissively at the empty lounge. Then I demand ownership over what is mine. I'm not property. Everyone is property. The only question is who owns you and what price they pay. His gaze held hers, unflinching. Right now, this lounge owns you. Your debt owns you. Your exhaustion owns you. I'm offering to pay a better price. For what exactly? Victoria's voice shook with anger now, not fear. Sex whenever you want it? A kept woman you can show off to your friends. For your time. Your attention. Your body when I demand it, yes. He didn't flinch from the accusation. But also your honesty. Your presence. The parts of yourself you've been selling in pieces to survive. I want them whole. I want to know that when I call, you answer. When I require you, you come. When I claim you, you submit. The bluntness should have been insulting. Somehow, it felt more honest than anything else in her life. Victoria laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that surprised them both. You think I'm shocked? You think this is the first time a man has tried to buy me? She stepped closer, eliminating the careful distance he'd maintained, invading his space the way he'd invaded hers. I've been selling pieces of myself for 2 years, Mr. Kong. Selling my time for minimum wage. Selling my dignity for tips. Selling my youth for a dream that might never come true. You're just offering a better rate. Now it was his turn to look surprised. A crack in that perfect control. But if you want to own me, Victoria continued, her voice dropping lower, steadier, you have to earn the right. Kong Min's jaw tightened. I just offered you. A transaction. A contract. She tilted her head, studying him the way he'd been studying her. You know what I think, Mr. Kong? I think you're used to people saying yes because they're afraid to say no. I think you've bought a lot of things in your life, but you've never had to earn anything. I think that's why you want me, because I'm the first person who hasn't immediately rolled over for your money and your power. Silence stretched between them, taut as a wire about to snap. Then Victoria made her decision. The same kind of decision that had brought her across an ocean, that had kept her standing through exhaustion and humiliation, that had made her believe she could become someone who mattered. She stepped even closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to see the muscle ticking in his jaw. Her hands moved to the edge of the table between them, fingertips barely grazing the polished wood. You're offering a contract, Mr. Kong? Protection for access? Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper, intimate, dangerous. Tell me something. She looked up at him through her lashes, saw his pupils dilate, saw his careful control starting to fracture. If I take off this uniform right here, right now, and stand before you vulnerable and yours, will you stay if I undress? The question hung in the air like a lit match near gasoline. Kong Min's composure shattered. His knuckles went white where his hands gripped the edge of the table. The muscle in his jaw jumped. His breathing changed, becoming shallow, controlled with visible effort. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked like a man barely holding himself back from something primal. When he spoke, his voice was raw, stripped of that careful control. I won't just stay, Victoria. He moved closer, forcing her to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. The table pressed against her thighs, trapping her. I will claim every moment of your time, every thought in your mind, every breath in your body. His hand rose slowly, deliberately, until his fingers hovered just beside her face, not quite touching. I will not let you leave my sight. I will own you so completely that you'll forget you ever belonged to anyone else, including yourself. Victoria's heart thundered in her chest. You ask for a contract. His voice dropped to a possessive rasp that sent electricity down her spine. I offer a life sentence. Prison with me as your only warden, your only visitor, your only world. Are you ready for that kind of focus, Victoria? That kind of obsession? She should be terrified. Every instinct should be screaming at her to run. Instead, she felt alive for the first time in 2 years. Then the shift is over, Mr. Kong. Her hands moved to her waist, unfastening the apron ties with deliberate slowness. The fabric whispered as she let it drop to the floor between them. His eyes tracked the movement, then snapped back to her face. Victoria reached for the zipper at the back of her black uniform dress. The metal was cool against her fingertips. She found the pull tab, watching his face as she slowly, deliberately began to lower it. The whisper of the zipper was obscenely loud in the silent lounge. 1 inch. 2. Kong Min moved with lethal speed. One moment, he was on the opposite side of the table. The next, he'd closed the distance, his hands gripping her shoulders firmly, spinning her around and pressing her back against the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. The glass was cold against her back. His body was furnace-hot against her front, completely shielding her from the empty lounge, from any possible view. No. The word was a growl, possessive and fierce. His face was inches from hers, his breath coming in short bursts. You will not be a spectacle, Victoria. The rest of the world has looked at you long enough. Every customer in this place, every man on the street, every person who saw you as less than you are, they've had their chance to see you. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with surprising gentleness despite the intensity in his voice. Only I get to see what I own. Only I get to witness your vulnerability. Only I. The door exploded inward. 3 men in black tactical gear burst into the lounge, faces covered, guns drawn. The lead one's eyes scanned the room, landing on Kong Min's back, on Victoria pinned against the window. Safes in the office. The first one barked in Korean. Kill anyone who moves. Victoria's breath stopped in her lungs. Terror flooded through her veins, cold and paralyzing. She couldn't scream, couldn't breathe, couldn't think beyond the primal understanding that she was about to die. Kong Min didn't move, didn't turn, didn't release her. Instead, his lips came to her ear, his voice impossibly calm despite the guns pointed at his back. Count to 10 for me. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. Count, Victoria. Out loud. Don't stop, no matter what you hear. His hand moved from her face to the back of her head, pressing her face into his shoulder. His other hand moved behind his back, beneath his suit jacket. 1. The word came out broken, terrified. Good girl. Keep going. 2. Tears burned her eyes. 3. A sharp crack split the air, muffled but unmistakable. A gunshot. 4. Her voice shook violently. 5. The heavy thud of something hitting the floor. 6. She squeezed her eyes shut, her hands fisting in his shirt. 7. Another crack, slightly different pitch. 8. Another body falling. 9. Victoria's entire body trembled against his. 10. The final shot. Then silence. Kong Min's hand gentled in her hair, his other hand returning to brace against the window beside her head. He was breathing hard now, his chest rising and falling against hers. The scent of gunpowder mixed with his cologne, acrid and wrong. Open your eyes, Victoria. I can't. Open them. Look at me. Only me. She forced her eyes open. His face filled her vision, intense and focused entirely on her. She could see 3 bodies in her peripheral vision, sprawled across the lounge floor, but Kong Min shifted slightly, blocking her view. You saw that. It wasn't a question. His forehead pressed against hers, his breath ragged and hot against her lips. You saw how fast I will eliminate anything that threatens to distract me when I am claiming you. Victoria's mind couldn't process what had just happened. 3 men. 3 shots. He hadn't even looked at them. Had kept his eyes on her the entire time. Who were they? Opportunists. Rivals. Does it matter? His thumb traced her trembling lower lip. They came between me and what's mine. That's all you need to know. He pulled her away from the window finally, both hands framing her face now, forcing her to focus on him despite the carnage behind them. Now, we begin our contract. His voice was steady again, that dangerous control reasserting itself, though his eyes still burned with barely contained intensity. You will never set foot in this lounge again. You will quit both jobs tonight. I'll handle any logistics. You will move into an apartment I've already prepared for you tomorrow. You will focus solely on your studies and your degree. When I call for you, you will answer. When I require your presence, you will come. When I decide I want you, you will be available. No questions, no hesitation, no divided loyalties. He leaned closer, his lips barely brushing the shell of her ear. And you will stay, Victoria. Not because I'm forcing you, not because of the money, but because tonight, you saw exactly what I'm capable of, and you're still standing here in my arms instead of running for the door. You will stay because we both know what you are now. What's that? The question came out barely audible. Mine. Completely. Irrevocably. Forever. He pulled back to look at her, searching her face for something. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because his expression softened fractionally. Last chance, Victoria. You can walk out that door. I'll still pay your debt, still set you up. You'll never see me again. Or, you let me carry you out of here. You accept that your life as you knew it ended the moment you asked if I'd stay. You become what you were always meant to be. Victoria looked past his shoulder at the fallen men, at the gun he'd already tucked away, at the casual violence he'd committed without breaking his focus on her. She should be horrified, traumatized, running. Instead, she felt something click into place. Something that had been broken and scattered suddenly becoming whole. I have a midterm in 3 days, she said quietly. Kong Min smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face into something almost beautiful. I'll make sure you have time to study. And I want my own key. To wherever you're putting me. You'll have 2. 1 for your place. 1 for mine. I'm not giving up becoming a doctor. I'm counting on it. I don't invest in anything less than excellence. Victoria took a shaky breath. Then carry me out of here, Mr. Kong, before I come to my senses. He lifted her into his arms with easy strength, cradling her against his chest as if she weighed nothing, as if she was precious cargo instead of a waitress he'd just bought. He walked past the fallen men without a glance, past her abandoned apron on the floor, past the table where he'd been watching her for 3 nights. The night air hit her face as he carried her through the door and toward a black car waiting at the curb. A driver held the door open, expressionless, as if his employer frequently emerged from establishments carrying women past corpses. Kong Min settled her in the leather seat, then slid in beside her. The door closed, cocooning them in darkness and silence. The car pulled away from Moonlight Lounge, from Victoria's old life, from everything she'd been before tonight. His arm remained around her shoulders, possessive and protective. Her head rested against his chest, listening to his heartbeat finally begin to slow from its earlier intensity. "You never told me your name," she said quietly. "Your real name, Kong Min-jun. But you'll call me Min." "Min," she tested the intimacy of it. "What exactly do you do?" "The truth. I acquire things people don't want to sell. I protect investments. I eliminate problems." His hand stroked her hair with surprising gentleness. "I run an empire built on calculated risks and absolute control. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman in a business most people don't understand. And now I'm what? Your mistress? You're mine. That's the only title that matters." Victoria closed her eyes, exhaustion finally crashing over her now that the adrenaline was fading. "I'm going to medical school. I'm going to be a doctor. That doesn't change. I know. That's why I want you. Ambition is the only thing more valuable than obedience." His lips brushed her forehead. "You'll be Dr. Victoria Lee. And when you are, you'll still be mine. What if I fall in love with someone else?" His arm tightened around her. "You won't. Because I don't share what I own, and I'll make sure you never want anyone but me." It should have sounded like a threat. Somehow, it sounded like a promise. The car drove through Seoul's streets, carrying them toward whatever future Kong Min had already constructed. Victoria knew she should be thinking about the violence she'd witnessed, the deal she'd made, the life she was leaving behind. Instead, she thought about counting to 10 while he killed 3 men without looking away from her eyes. About the way he'd shielded her body with his own. About how, for the first time in 2 years, she wasn't worried about rent or debt, or how she'd survive until morning. "Will you really let me finish my degree?" she asked quietly. "Yes. Will you really pay off my debt?" "It's already done. The wire transfer will process tomorrow morning." Victoria's breath caught. "You already? I decided 3 months ago that you would be mine. Tonight just made it official." His hand found hers in the darkness, fingers interlacing with possessive certainty. "I don't wait for things I intend to own, Victoria. I simply ensure they come to me when I'm ready to claim them." "You're insane." "Yes. And now you're mine, which makes you complicit in my insanity." Despite everything, the violence, the fear, the impossibility of what she'd just agreed to, Victoria smiled against his chest. "I have an exam at 9. I'll have you back at your apartment by 7. That gives you time to shower and study. You're not staying with me tonight?" "No." His voice held a note of strained control. "Tonight, you process what happened. You adjust to your new reality. Tomorrow, we establish the parameters of our arrangement. But tonight, you sleep alone. One last night of the old Victoria before you become entirely mine." The car pulled up in front of her small apartment building. The driver opened the door. Kong Min released her carefully, helping her out. On the sidewalk, under the harsh streetlight, Victoria looked up at him. "I'm not going to regret this, am I?" He cupped her face in both hands. "You're going to regret it every day for the first month. You'll question your sanity, your choices, what you've become. But then," his thumb brushed her lower lip again, that possessive gesture already becoming familiar, "you'll realize that what we have is the most honest transaction you've ever made. And you'll stop regretting it and start claiming it." He kissed her then, deep and possessive and claiming, in full view of anyone who might be watching. When he pulled back, his eyes glittered with dark promise. "Sleep, Victoria. Study for your exam. I'll call you tomorrow." "When?" "When I decide I want to hear your voice. That's how this works now. You wait for me. You answer when I call. You come when I summon." He turned to go, but Victoria caught his sleeve. "Min." He looked back, surprised by her use of his intimate name. "Thank you," she said quietly. For staying. When I undressed. His smile was predatory and satisfied. I told you, Victoria. I won't just stay. I'll never leave. You're mine now. And I protect what's mine with everything I have. He left her standing on the sidewalk, watching his car disappear into Seoul's nighttime traffic. Victoria climbed the stairs to her apartment, the one she'd only occupy for one more night, and collapsed on her lumpy mattress still in her uniform, the zipper still partially undone from where he'd stopped her. She should call someone. Her mother. A friend. The police. Instead, she pulled out her phone and opened her student account. The debt balance that had haunted her for 2 years showed 0. He'd already done it. Already paid it. Already made good on his promise. Victoria started laughing, a half-hysterical, half-relieved sound that turned into tears. She'd sold herself. Given herself to a criminal. Become owned property in exchange for freedom from debt. And God help her, she didn't regret it. Not even a little. She fell asleep still in her uniform, dreaming of counting to 10 while the world exploded around her, safe in the knowledge that someone had finally decided she was worth protecting. 6 months later, Victoria woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Gangnam. The apartment Kang Min had set up for her was obscene. 2 bedrooms, modern kitchen she barely used, a study space where her textbooks and medical journals were neatly organized on custom shelving. She stretched in sheets that probably cost more than a month's rent at her old place. No alarm blaring. No panic about being late for a shift. Just soft morning light and the scent of coffee from the automatic machine in the kitchen. Her hands, once rough and service-worn, were manicured now smooth, soft. The kind of hands that looked like they belonged to someone with options. Someone with worth. She padded to the kitchen in silk pajamas he'd left in her closet, along with an entire wardrobe of clothes in her exact size. The refrigerator was stocked with her favorite foods. He had someone handle that, along with cleaning, maintenance, everything that had once consumed her limited time and energy. Victoria should feel like a kept woman, like property. Instead, she felt like she'd finally stopped drowning. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Min. Exam today. You'll ace it. Dinner tonight. I'm picking you up at 7. Not a question. Never a question. Just statements of fact about how her time would be spent. She texted back. Confident in my abilities? His response came immediately. I own you. That means I own your success. I don't invest in failures. Victoria smiled at the phone. 6 months, and she still wasn't sure if his particular brand of possessive confidence was infuriating or intoxicating. Probably both. She'd aced every exam since that night. Her GPA had climbed back to 3.9. Professors were noticing her again, recommending her for competitive research positions. The exhaustion that had been slowly killing her had lifted, replaced by actual focus and energy. And Min. The door to her apartment opened. He had keys, of course. Had always had keys. Came and went as he pleased, which was often but never predictable. He walked in like he owned the place. Which technically he did. Victoria leaned against the kitchen counter, watching him cross the space toward her. 6 months, and he still made her breath catch. Still moved with that lethal grace that spoke of violence barely contained beneath expensive tailoring. You have an exam, he said, stopping close enough to touch. Why aren't you studying? I studied yesterday. And the day before. I'm prepared. His hand came up to cup her face, a gesture that had become ritual. Checking that she was real, present, his. Confident. You taught me that. Own your worth. Good girl. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, possessive and thorough. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with promise. After dinner tonight, you're coming home with me. I haven't had you in my bed in 3 days. I had midterms. I know. I gave you space to focus. Now you're done, and I want my time. Victoria should object to being scheduled like an appointment. Should push back against his presumptions about her availability. Instead, she smiled. I'll pack a bag. Already done. It's in my car. Of course it was. He anticipated her needs before she knew them herself. A level of attention that should be suffocating, but somehow felt like being seen for the first time in her life. Possessive, she murmured. Absolutely. No shame in the admission. You agreed to total ownership, Victoria. Did you think I wouldn't take inventory of my investment regularly? She laughed, the sound genuine and light. 6 months ago, she'd been drowning. Now she was. What? Happy. Successful. Free. All of the above, in the strangest way possible. I should get ready for my exam, she said. Yes. But he didn't release her, his thumb tracing her lower lip in that possessive gesture that never failed to make her shiver. After you finish, text me your grade. What if I fail? His eyes hardened. You won't, because I don't allow what's mine to fail. But if you did, his hand tightened fractionally on her face. I'd make you retake it until you passed. Your success is mine, Victoria. Your failure would be mine too. I don't tolerate failure. It should be pressure. Somehow it was liberating. He released her finally, but not before claiming another kiss. Go. Prove to yourself what I already know, that you're exceptional. He left, and Victoria got ready for her exam with the kind of focused confidence she'd never had before. Because Min was right, she was exceptional. She'd always been exceptional. She just needed someone to pay the right price to prove it. The exam was easier than she'd expected. Victoria finished with 20 minutes to spare, double-checked her answers, and submitted it with satisfaction. Outside the exam hall, she texted Min. 96%. Would have been 100%, but question 7 was ambiguous. His response, acceptable. Dinner at 7. Wear the red dress. Victoria smiled at her phone. She knew which dress he meant. The one he'd had delivered last week, deep crimson silk that hugged every curve. The kind of dress that made her feel powerful and desired in equal measure. She spent the afternoon at the library, getting ahead on next week's reading, then returned to her apartment to get ready. The red dress fit perfectly, as everything he chose for her did. Victoria studied herself in the mirror. The woman looking back barely resembled the exhausted waitress from 6 months ago. This woman looked rested, confident, expensive. Kept, whispered a small voice in her head. Bought and paid for. Owned, she corrected. And in the best possible way. Min's car arrived exactly at 7. His driver, the same impassive man from that first night, opened the door for her. Min waited in the back seat, devastating in a dark gray suit, his eyes tracking her movements as she slid in beside him. Before she could settle, his hand shot out, gripping her waist and pulling her across the seat into his lap. 6 days, he growled against her neck. I gave you 6 days to focus on exams. I'm done being patient. His mouth found hers, demanding and possessive, one hand fisted in her hair while the other splayed across her lower back, pressing her against him. When he finally released her enough to breathe, Victoria was dizzy, aroused, exactly where he wanted her. Dinner first, he said, though his hand remained possessive on her thigh. I want to show you off. Then I'm taking you home and keeping you for the weekend. I have studying. You're ahead in all your classes. I checked. Of course he had. This weekend you're mine. No phones. No books. No distractions. The restaurant was exclusive, the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Min kept his hand on her throughout dinner. On her thigh, her waist, the back of her neck. Constant contact, constant claim. Other diners noticed. Watched them with curiosity, speculation. The powerful Korean man and his beautiful black companion. The obvious intimacy between them. The way he watched her like she was the only person in the room. People are staring, Victoria murmured. Let them. His thumb stroked the inside of her wrist possessively. Let them see exactly who you belong to. I'm not a trophy. No, you're a treasure. And I'm reminding the world that treasures are guarded. After dinner, they drove to his penthouse. A space she'd been to a dozen times but still took her breath away. All glass and steel, minimalist luxury, commanding views of Seoul. The moment the door closed behind them, Min's control snapped. He had her against the door, his body pinning hers, his mouth claiming hers with 6 days of pent-up hunger. His hands found the zipper of her red dress. The same deliberate motion she'd made 6 months ago. And this time, no one interrupted. The dress pooled at her feet. His suit jacket followed. Then his shirt, revealing the lean, muscled body she'd come to know intimately over 6 months. Bedroom, she gasped between kisses. Here. His voice was rough with need. Against this door. Where I claimed you 6 months ago. Not the lounge. His penthouse had a similar window. But the principle was the same. He pressed her against the glass overlooking Seoul, his body shielding hers from the world. Just like that first night. Mine, he growled, his hands mapping every inch of her skin. Say it. Yours, Victoria breathed, arching into his touch. Always yours. Again. Yours, Min, completely yours. He made love to her against that window with the same intensity he did everything. Total focus, absolute possession, demanding her surrender and giving his own in return. Afterward, he carried her to his bed, that massive, custom-made space where she'd spent countless nights over the past 6 months, and held her against his chest while their breathing slowed. "I'm graduating in 3 years," Victoria said quietly into the darkness. "My degree will be finished. What happens then? You continue your residency. Become the doctor you were always meant to be. And us." His arm tightened around her. "There is no end date on ownership, Victoria. You're mine for life. The only question is whether you continue fighting that truth or accept it." She should be scared of that level of commitment, that permanence. Instead, she felt safe, certain, claimed in the way she'd always secretly wanted, but never had the courage to ask for. "I don't fight it anymore," she admitted. "I know. That's why I'm not letting you go." They fell asleep tangled together, and Victoria dreamed of counting to 10 while the world exploded around her, protected by a man who decided she was worth killing for. 2.5 years later, Victoria stood in the graduation ceremony hall at Seoul National University, wearing her medical school robes, waiting for her name to be called. Dr. Victoria Lee. She'd done it. Through exhaustion and doubt, and the constant pressure of Min's expectations, she'd actually done it. Her name was called. She walked across the stage, accepted her diploma, and scanned the audience. He was easy to find. The only person not applauding, just watching with that intense, proprietary focus that had been trained on her for 3 years. Kang Min sat in the back row, perfectly still, his eyes never leaving her. Not pride, not celebration, just possession. The satisfaction of watching an investment pay off exactly as predicted. Victoria smiled at him, and only him. After the ceremony, while other graduates celebrated with family, she found Min waiting by his car. "Congratulations, Dr. Lee." He pulled her into his arms, kissing her in full view of her classmates and professors. "I knew you would. You never doubted?" "Not once. I don't invest in things that fail." His hand cupped her face in that familiar gesture. "You're exactly what I knew you'd become." He handed her a small box. Inside were keys. "What are these?" "Your medical practice. Small for now, 3 exam rooms, a waiting area, office space in Gangnam. Already licensed and equipped. You start building your patient list tomorrow." Victoria's breath caught. "Min, you're mine, Victoria. But I don't keep what I own in cages." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "You'll practice medicine. Build your career. Become the doctor you were always meant to be. And when you come home at night, you'll still be mine." Tears burned her eyes. "You really mean it? I told you 3 years ago. I invested in your ambition, not your obedience. I want you successful, powerful, accomplished." His voice dropped lower. "I want you to know exactly what you're worth so that when I claim you, you understand the value of what I own." She kissed him then, deep and grateful and certain. "Take me home," she whispered. "Which home? Yours or mine? Does it matter? They're both yours." His smile was predatory and satisfied. "That's my girl." They drove past Moonlight Lounge, now closed, the building empty and dark. Victoria stared at it as they passed. "That's where it started," she said quietly. "Where I stopped being invisible." "That's where I claimed the only thing I'd ever wanted to own," Min corrected. He pulled the car to a stop, looking at the abandoned building. "Do you regret it? That night? The deal?" Victoria thought about the question honestly. Thought about the woman she'd been, exhausted, drowning, invisible. Thought about the woman she was now, successful, confident, owned but somehow more free than she'd ever been. "I regret not having a choice at the beginning," she said finally. "I regret the desperation that brought me to that point. But regret us? Regret what we became." She turned to look at him. Never. Not even for a second. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing with the same possessive certainty they had 3 years ago. "Good. Because I'd burned down Seoul before I'd let you go." "That's insane." "Yes. And you love me anyway." It wasn't a question, but Victoria answered it anyway. "Yes. God help me, I do." They drove away from the lounge, from the past, from everything she'd been before the night. She asked a dangerous question and got a dangerous answer. 3 years. From invisible waitress to doctor. From drowning in debt to building a medical practice. From property to partner. Or as close to partnership as Kang Min's possessive nature allowed. She'd sold herself. Given herself completely. Become owned in exchange for freedom. And somehow, impossibly, it had been the best decision of her life. Present day, 5 years later. Victoria Lee, MD, sat in her office at the Lee Medical Practice. No longer 3 exam rooms, but an entire floor of a medical building, with 2 associate physicians and a staff of 12. She'd built something real, something valuable, something that proved she was exactly who she'd always known she could be. Her phone buzzed. A text from Min, dinner. 8 p.m. Reservations at Mingles. She smiled at the screen, typed back, I have a late patient. His response, reschedule. I want you at 8. 5 years, and he still commanded rather than asked. Still owned her time, her attention, her presence. 5 years, and she still answered when he called. Victoria rescheduled the patient, closed her practice, and went home to change. The apartment, she'd long since moved into Min's penthouse permanently, though he maintained her original place for appearances, was quiet when she arrived. Min wasn't home yet. She showered, dressed in the black dress he preferred, and waited. He arrived at 7:30, still in his work clothes. Whatever work meant for a man who built an empire on calculated risks and absolute control. He looked tired, stressed, the weight of his world visible in the tension across his shoulders. Victoria crossed the room to him, pressed her hands against his chest. Bad day. Long day. His arms came around her automatically, pulling her close. Better now. Want to talk about it? No. I want to take my wife to dinner and forget that anything exists outside of this room. Wife. Not legally, he'd never asked and she'd never pushed. But in every way that mattered, that's what she was. Then let's go forget, she said softly. Dinner at Mingles was perfect, Michelin-starred perfection. The kind of meal that would have been unimaginable to the exhausted waitress from 5 years ago. Afterward, they drove through Seoul's nighttime streets, and Victoria felt Min's hand tighten on hers. What is it? She asked. I'm thinking about the first time I saw you. At the lounge. Before that. 3 months before. You were on the bus, exhausted from a shift, counting tip money. Your shoe had a split in the sole. You were crying but trying to hide it, wiping your tears before anyone could see. His voice was quiet, reflective. That's when I decided I was going to own you. Because I was crying. Because you were drowning but still fighting. Because you had something I'd never seen in anyone else. The refusal to quit even when quitting would have been easier. I wanted that. Wanted to possess it. Wanted to own someone that valuable. Victoria's throat tightened. You're a strange man, Kang Min-jun. Yes. And you're mine. So what does that make you? Complicit in your strangeness. He laughed, a real, genuine laugh that she treasured because it was so rare. Yes. Exactly that. They pulled up to a building Victoria didn't recognize. Not his penthouse. Not her practice. Somewhere new. Where are we? Min got out, came around to open her door. Something I've been working on. He led her inside, through a marble lobby, up an elevator to the top floor. The door opened directly into a penthouse apartment. Bigger than his, more luxurious, with views that commanded the entire city. What is this? Ours. He walked her through the space, master suite, guest rooms, an office space large enough for both of them, a kitchen that actually looked like it was meant to be used. I bought it 6 months ago. Finished the renovations last week. Why? He turned to face her, his expression serious. Because I want you to marry me, Victoria. Legally. Officially. I want you to be my wife in every way, not just the ones that matter to me. I want the world to know that you're mine. Victoria's breath caught. You're asking? Yes. For the first time in 5 years, I'm asking instead of commanding. Because this choice has to be yours. He took both her hands, his grip firm and certain. Marry me. Not because I own you, but because you choose to be owned. That's the strangest proposal I've ever heard. It's the only one you'll ever get. His thumb traced her ring finger, where no ring had ever sat. Say yes, Victoria. Make it official. Let me put my name on you the way I've put my mark on everything else. She should think about it. Consider the implications. Weigh the decision. Instead, she stepped close, wrapped her arms around his neck, and whispered, yes. His kiss was possessive and relieved and certain. When he pulled back, he was smiling. That rare, genuine expression she'd learned to treasure. There's one more thing, he said. More. He led her to the office space, opened a door she hadn't noticed. Inside was a smaller room, converted into a nursery? Victoria breathed. Eventually. When you're ready. when your practice is stable enough, when we decide we want to create something that's ours together. He pulled her against his side, both of them looking at the empty room. I want children with you, Victoria. I want to own not just you but the family we build. I want everything. Victoria felt tears burn her eyes. You're really all in, aren't you? I was all in the first night I saw you crying on a bus. Everything since then has just been making that decision reality. She turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd bought her, owned her, claimed her, and somehow set her free in the process. I love you, she said. I know I don't say it enough. I know our relationship doesn't look like other people's. But I love you, Min, completely. Irrevocably. I know. His hand cupped her face with familiar possessiveness. I've always known. Why do you think I've never doubted your commitment? Because you own me? Because you chose to be owned. That's the difference, Victoria. You had a choice that night. You could have walked away. You stayed. And you've kept choosing to stay, every day for 5 years. That's not ownership. That's devotion. Then I'm devoted to you. To us. To this strange, unconventional life we've built. Good. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Because I'm never letting you go. You're mine for life, Dr. Lee. And soon you'll be Dr. Kong. That's very presumptuous. That's very realistic. I know what I own, and I know you're not going anywhere. He was right. She wasn't. Victoria Lee, the girl who'd been drowning, the waitress who'd been invisible, the student who'd been desperate, had asked a dangerous question 5 years ago. Will you stay if I undress? Kong Min had answered with his entire life. Had stayed not just for a moment, but for every moment since. Had claimed her so completely that she'd forgotten what it felt like to belong to anyone else. And she'd discovered something that most people never learned. Sometimes the right cage is the one you choose. Sometimes ownership looks like freedom. Sometimes the most dangerous thing a woman can do is recognize her worth and demand someone pay it in full. She'd sold herself for tuition and freedom from debt. She'd gained a life, a practice, a future, and a man who'd burned down the world before he'd let her go. Fair trade. 10 years after. The charity gala was in full swing when Victoria and Min arrived. She wore emerald silk, designer, custom-made, the kind of dress that announced success and power in equal measure. Her name tag read Dr. Victoria Kong, Chief of Medicine, Lee Kong Medical Center. They'd expanded. Her practice had grown into a full medical center, with Min's business acumen and her medical expertise combining to create something remarkable. They'd married 5 years ago in a small, private ceremony. Had 2 children, a daughter and a son, who were currently being watched by trusted staff at home. They'd built an empire together. His, hers, theirs. Someone approached. A socialite whose name Victoria couldn't remember, but whose curiosity was obvious. Dr. Kong, I've been dying to ask. How did you and your husband meet? Such an unusual pairing, and yet you two seem so perfectly matched. Victoria smiled, felt Min's hand tighten possessively on her waist. I asked him a question, she said simply. A question? Yes. I asked if he'd stay if I undressed. The socialite blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. Min's smile was predatory and satisfied. And I told her I'd never leave. And he didn't, Victoria added, looking up at her husband with genuine affection. He stayed. He claimed me. He owned me. And he gave me everything I needed to become who I was meant to be. The socialite looked confused, probably trying to reconcile the successful, confident doctor in front of her with the story of ownership and possession. Victoria didn't bother explaining further. Some people understood that love came in many forms. Others would never comprehend that sometimes ownership was the deepest form of devotion. As they walked away, Min pulled her closer. Still mine, he murmured. Always yours, Victoria confirmed. Completely. Irrevocably. Forever. Good. Because I'm not done with you yet. What more could you possibly want? You have me, our children, our life. Everything. His eyes held that familiar possessive intensity. I want every day, every moment, every breath. I want to watch you succeed and know it's because I gave you the freedom to fly. I want to own you when we're old and gray and our children have children. I want it all, Victoria. The way I've always wanted it. She laughed, the sound genuine and free. You're insane. Yes. And you love me for it. He was right. She did. Victoria Lee, Dr. Victoria Kong now, had made a deal with the devil 10 years ago. Had sold herself for tuition and survival. Had asked a question that changed everything. Will you stay if I undress? And Kong Min had answered with his life. Had stayed through medical school, residency, marriage, children, success, and failure. Had owned her so completely that she'd forgotten what it felt like to belong to anyone else. Some people would call it a cautionary tale. A woman who sold herself to a criminal for money. Victoria called it the best deal she'd ever made. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing a woman can do is recognize her own value. Sometimes the right cage is the one you choose with someone who treasures what he locks away. Sometimes ownership looks like freedom, possession looks like partnership, and control looks like love. She'd asked if he'd stay if she undressed. He'd stayed for everything else too. And that, Victoria thought as Min pulled her onto the dance floor, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization after 10 years of practice, was the real fairy tale. Not the prince who saved the princess, but the devil who claimed her and gave her the keys to her own kingdom anyway.